So we have learned today about marketing, about community building, about sales, and how about putting it all together and thinking about starting a business. Our next speaker has a huge experience in starting his own businesses, with also fundraising stories and exits. And I'm happy to welcome on the stage Dmytro Boguslavskyy, the founder of Dive.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you. Thanks a lot for the introduction, Nicholas. Very happy to be here. Very happy to have a talk or let you know about my experience, everything I saw before. Yeah, why not just starting on it, right?
Yeah, please just start sharing your presentation, cool. And you can go ahead.
Okay. So it's just that I see the chat also. Okay, cool. Cool. So yes, it was a lot about digital marketing and so on, but what I wanted to go into is my recent experience that I had in building a company, which was about hypergrowth with e-scooters. Now, my background in itself was a lot about building products, starting some startups, trying to bring them forward, handling a lot of software only, let's say, environments, and understanding the customer, understanding the user, do the whole topic of product development. But there was a recent experience that I had was about scooters, which is a little bit different in itself. And I think not everyone will always have the ability to go to a hypergrowth startup in itself, but it's always good to have a glimpse inside. And in case one of you actually will drop in, it will definitely be interesting to see how one can resolve it. So if you, for example, we raised 55 million in our Series A, which was happening 3 months after we funded the company. And if you get that amount of money, it's good to have at least some understanding or knowledge how to use it, because you have very clear targets. You have a direction to go for, saying, okay, you have like 6 months. So if you get 50 million, what are you doing this? What do you do in 6 months? How can you not only spend it, but actually utilize it in the right way? And this is what I wanted to share here, all the knowledge that I have around this. Actually, I have a question quickly. I don't know if I can see the chat, and how can I see the chat? Here in public. Okay, so if someone has questions within the presentation, just drop them. I will try to answer them right away. So yeah, let's go into the idea of hypergrowth and in scooters itself. So why is growth in scooter business special? It's different from software businesses where you actually not always know how it's going to evolve, what's going to be the direction, what's going to be the monetization. Not necessarily in B2B, but in B2C, it's always a big question. With scooters, it's pretty simple. You have a scooter at one spot. It has to be picked up by a customer, drove to spot B, spot C, so spot D. Then it loses battery. An operations guy comes over, picks it up, goes back, charges it, brings it back on the street. If your operations cost is lower than the revenues, you're actually profitable. This is a pretty simple model. And so you build all the products and all your processes and ideas around it. You need to optimize constantly on reducing operations and increasing revenue. So the more money you put in, the more money you get out. That's mostly about the more scooters you buy, the more scooters you place, the more money you get actually out of it. If you have this very clear path forward, you need to know, okay, how are you going to make the best out of it? If you're receiving such a huge amount of funding, you need to know, okay, where do I buy scooters? Where do I put the money to buy the scooters? And where do I put the money to actually make them operational? And this is all about organizing resources, processes, a bit less of research and development, but more about being very clear. Okay, we have a very short period of time, tons of money. How do we put it down and make it work? Some key points to focus on, actually, two that I was always I saw we were looking at was people and execution. Let's get into people. So with people, I remember the first day, or not the first day, but first days when this happened. Actually, quickly rewind backward is my company. I had a small bike sharing company for like 2 months operating when I met with this more senior mobility entrepreneur, where we decided to actually start the company Circ, where we merged together. And my sharing business, we had a couple of engineers in the background. We had like, I think 9 people, and we decided, okay, let's kickstart this off and merge together, which was a couple of days after they founded the company. So we brought in, with our, let's say, acqui-hire merger, right away 9 people. But at the same time, you need much more people. You need people for operations, you need people for decision making, you need people for not even less marketing, let's say, but because you have the scooters on the street. But how do you make them all work together? Here, it's super important to provide a high level of autonomy. And the high level of autonomy is, my team, for example, that came in was fully responsible for tech. I could trust these people. I've worked with them before for a longer period of time. We built a platform that was then utilized. And I know that I could drop off some ideas on them, or let's say some tasks, and they would be fully executed. So there doesn't need to be like look after. But you still miss the people in operations. So in this case, you have to recruit only top talent. So you cannot go for, let's say, junior positions or junior people. You have to go more further out for really senior people, and you have to buy them out. You go to competitors. I remember we were hiring people from, like, general managers from Italy or France, from other companies, from competitors or kind of similar businesses, and you have to put up like 30% of salary and actually bring them in almost the next day. We were flying in people from San Francisco, from Mexico, so that they arrive like almost on time to start working right away. Important point there is there's no time to learn and only execute. Of course, a startup is a lot about learning usual cases, but in hypergrowth, it's really, there's no time for that. I need to be sure that if I communicate an idea or I communicate kind of a decision that has previously been done, it be decided upon, it has to be done. It has to be done in the best possible way. And it's not that I can communicate how it's going to be done. I need to expect that it's going to be done the right way. And that's a very weird way to be together. You have to have full trust into the people and know that, yeah, they're going to execute it the right way. So you have, for example, hire GM people from Mobike or from other bike sharing companies, and they know how to set up a warehouse, they know how to set up the whole infrastructure inside the warehouse, how to do the processes, how to hire the right drivers, the right mechanics. And so you know that when you're setting up a warehouse or you're, they're going to know how to do it. So you need to make the decision to set up the warehouse, for example. And this is kind of where it goes into how to execute it. But it's also on the tech side a lot. On the tech side, you have engineers, you have product people. You need to be able to drop a certain direction on the product guy, and he's going to execute fully up on it and have the team in control and have other teams connected to actually build up on it. And yeah, often talking now about execution, this is, let's say, the core point of it. Having a clear path, which is only possible in operational business. A clear path in this is more having playbooks of how to do it. It's not necessarily to tech, and to tech I'm gonna show. I have a couple of slides on how we were solving it, where it's more about objectives. But in execution, it's about playbooks. So often you can drop in such an operational business of delivery, food delivery, whatever, and you always need a playbook. And you usually build this on the way. We had to build it up front in the beginning, right? Like in the right way, based on the previous experience. And the playbook, I mean, is about like how to launch a city, how to launch a country, how to launch a warehouse, how to operate inside. So this is pretty interesting. Of when you're writing it down, you have to be sure that this is you're building this at this moment for someone who will operate upon this. And when you hire the people that I mentioned before, you have to hire the people that have the brain inside to actually build this playbook. You don't even have time to decide upon this playbook because everyone, even at higher levels, have to constantly take care of continuing the funding search and also like continuous communication, decision making. So changes are more painful. Be prepared. Changes are also happening in playbooks. Things are being done differently. Things in Portugal and Sweden are absolutely different. The streets are different. The people are different. The cars, the mentality, and so the playbook changes. And this needs to be very, very clear communicated. On another version of this slide that I didn't upload it, there's actually communication inside. And we had a Slack set up where we had every city had its own Slack channel where the people could communicate inside. And then we had country channels and channels that were kind of intercepting with each other, where people could share information. So learnings that were done in Sweden could quickly be shared to Portugal without going any bigger loops or any meetings and so on. This was literally the main communication model. We were even forbidding any type of WhatsApp communication. Everything had to be done in Slack up to the moment when we needed to provide SIM cards to our drivers so that they could, because not every driver has internet constantly available, so they could actually communicate better with each other on Slack. And also, when you're growing that fast, culture is super hard. There's no time to adapt, or you have to be. It's like 6 months, and you have a lot of people together. So we hired in 6 months. We had 800 people. If you imagine this amount of people, how quickly can you hire that? And it's like 800 people, from which 500 were drivers, or let's say operational people, and 300 were let's say all management, engineers, workers, and so on. So this is, you can't make them work together. They don't know each other in most cases. And that's why top talent, super important for this. So you can actually build up, you can trust each other right away on a professional basis. And you have to constantly monitor what is happening. Is there any toxicity coming up? Are there any tensions? And they need to be tackled right away, very straight in a single conversation. You clearly communicate. You don't like each other. Why don't you like each other? Let's talk about it. This is the way we were trying to resolve all these conflicts. Let's say this is more from a high level, quickly explain where we're looking at, how we're trying to solve execution and operational challenges, and actually getting into the business of hypergrowth. Inside of this whole thing, there's how to solve tech. Tech is always different. It's not operational. You don't have this outreach. You do have a clear understanding of how do we. Yeah, you need an app where you can unlock a scooter. But what do you need on the operational side? What do you need on the back office side? How do people understand what is happening? What is the overview? Where are the scooters? These questions that are put down are pretty obvious, let's say. It's hard to explain. It's not, you need to research for them, but you know that these are the components that are needed to be there. And then what is actually in detail has to be put over, given over to the product people that will need to collaborate with the teams on the best solution possible. So up front, as you had a playbook, we actually sat down and designed the way our team setup is going to be in 6 to 12 months. So this is a way how we had our team set up corresponding to our systems. And yeah, I was mostly also responsible for that, to actually make this work, doing a lot of hiring, but also a lot of engineering. We had other people that were doing even more hiring on a day-to-day basis. And here you can see very clearly, we sat down, said, yeah, we have a backend. There's everything happening, specifically focused microservice. We had our Flash app, which was for the customers. We had the ground ops interface. So we had a fleet management area inside, and we have the scooters on the right side, as you see. So from a high level, we had the fleet management where you have ground ops, people that can unlock and lock the scooter, find them on the map on their phone. But you have also the fleet management for desktop version. You have also everything on the vehicle itself that constantly communicates to the backend, and you have also the local teams, as you need some development teams locally at the places to, let's say, execute some specific topics in regards of regulation and government requirements. This had to be set up in exactly this way 1 or 2 months before, and then what you're doing is you're setting up the teams, and you go for the stable tech known way of like the Spotify pods, and you build up your teams. And we had this set up in this way for each of the teams that you saw above. We created cross-functional teams with engineers, designers, data scientists, and product people. And we put them down into their silos of user interfaces, operations interfaces, hardware parts that had to take care of the scooters, and local teams in itself. Clearly always looking into preparing functional lead that could interact with specific parts of the cross-functional team, and always focusing on building up the knowledge or resolving conflicts or moving people between the teams if necessary. How to, let's say, solve for the right direction? We were going towards very clear definition of needs and objectives, which we defined in the beginning right away. We said, okay, customers want to get from A to B fast, convenient, affordable, and safe. It will stay the same, it will not change. And for this, we selected single words that could describe what the need is. It was fast, convenient, affordable, and safe. And then you build up an objective around this, and you can say, okay, one-tap sign up and rent experience. This is a very clear, down to the essence understanding. Navigating customers along the fastest route, yes, very clear. Hardware tailored to local environment, convenience, very important, and optimization of scooter availability. So there are objectives that you set down to the teams to make them work autonomously, and because they're top tier talent, they actually can work together and achieve these targets. So we were pretty happy, like the way these interactions were going. When we had a common objective, we were sitting down. When we have had a discussion, or let's say it was a meeting, it was an amazing feeling because there was not too much discussion. It was very clear that someone who suggests an idea from his topical area, that he already is fully on board with this. And the team was not against it. It was just, okay. All clear, let's go, let's get out and do it. So this was kind of the experience inside. Every meeting was just fantastic because you could express yourself and people were fully behind it. One of the things, playbooks, as mentioned before, for local teams, operational teams, we have also created a playbook for our teams that we actually printed out and put on the desk for every team member, so they know exactly how we're working. And this was our first, let's say, core guideline that we were following. Maximum amount of people in teams. One person can only work at maximum 2 teams at a time, because sometimes things are, you have to share people or like back and forth, and people want to take care of certain tasks. Finishing projects end to end, and so on. And remind when you started the project. Well, okay, I will answer that question in a second. Per team, we have maximum 1 project. Yes, this is, let's say, the main guideline around team and distributing of work. And I think, I mean, this is kind of, I try to put it in a nutshell for the 15 minutes, which is a bit hard because I think there are much more insights. But yeah, if you have questions, that's good to put them down now. And I see one, top of customer needs, mentioned about what made you realize the demand for you. You started the project. First of all, you saw the Americans. So it was partially a copy, but you saw the Americans actually dropping down the scooters and getting huge valuations. And people realized that the demand was happening in the US and people wanted to move around. And a similar, like you still have the same streets in the same cities. So we understood that there is a high potential for that. And yeah, when the first American companies have entered actually Europe in Paris, we were already on the way to deploy our first scooter. So we saw the demand happening through the competition, if that answers the question correctly. Yeah, and basically, I think in a very quick manner, in 15 minutes, I tried to nail it down, which is pretty hard, but there's so much more to tell and so many interesting stories. But I hope that gave a lot of enough insights for anyone who will get a huge funding for a hyper-growth business, and we'll come back to this.
All right, thank you a lot for sharing this with us, Dmytro. It was very intensive, and I hope that it has provoked some new ideas and maybe some new approaches in the business for our attendees. See you at the round table for the rest of the questions.
Yes.
Thank you.
Happy. Cool. Thanks a lot, and see you soon, guys.